So my name is Ali Kara. I'm an econ major and I'm a rising senior.
Hi, my name is Esther Appiah. I am a rising junior and I am majoring in international studies with concentration in African studies with a religion minor.
So we are interested in documenting the experiences of Puerto Rican, African American, and West Indian migrants here. Everyone who eventually settles in Hartford or goes to school in Hartford or lives in Hartford has a pretty good understanding that it's a minority majority city, right? That the vast majority of the residents here are African Americans and Puerto Ricans and West Indians, and they have a very general idea that it was the tobacco industry that brought people here, but beyond that, really basic information, there isn't really a way to engage with the importance of this history. It's not taught in the public schools in any meaningful way, and it's not really there in public programming except towards the end of the summer in August when there's the West Indian parade and the Puerto Rican parade, and everyone comes out and sort of celebrates cultural heritage, and then everybody sort of goes back to business as usual. And the goal of this project is to think about people's everyday lives, right? If you think about international migration, most of the reasons why people would come here from Jamaica or Puerto Rico are also the same reasons why people would move from down south to east or to the Midwest or out west. The same kinds of motivations to find a better job or to get a better education or to have better social conditions in terms of racial segregation, to join their families, right? Whether to reunite with your children or your spouses. Those are all the same kinds of motivations that people had for coming to the US, and I think it's really important for the public to be able to connect that kind of migration with internal flows of people that happen in this country on a daily basis. So the overarching goal of the West Indian Social Club is to both tell this story, but to also incubate this kind of community-based engagement that's based on local residents telling their own life stories in their own words and mostly on their own terms, and to provide both a model for doing that and a space for doing that. So that's the really broad goals of the project.
We're finding migrants who came here in the 1940s, 50s, and so if we have a name, for example, we want to know where the name, who it belongs to, where the name originated from, how it got to Hartford, where it went when it went to Hartford. We went street by street, what houses they owned, what schools they went to, what church they belonged to, like little everyday things that people tend to be a part of. And then we document them, just all of who they are that we have access to figuring out information about. And the broader goal for that project is to be able to have like a comprehensive map, and be able to click on one person and be like, oh, they went to 6 different places, and this is exactly where they went, how they got there, who was with them when they went there. Just be able to track people. But I guess the fun part about it is that their family members are still alive now. So you can run into some random person and be able to be like, I know who your grandfather is. Wow. One of our recent projects that we've been working on is interviewing people who are involved in the No More Slumlords movement, kind of get a background of family history, their connection to Hartford, their sense of community, the pride they have in being Hartford residents. Try to find a way to capture that and still tell the story of housing access, discrimination practices, and unfair policies that some people have to endure.
So I think the goal is to track people's housing movements and to see how to document their patterns of housing, and then what kind of conditions they had in terms of housing, and then to be able to document it and record it.
So I think the biggest lesson we've had to learn so far is that it's easy to learn about facts and stories and, you know, historical events, but to actually talk to people whose life history is far back enough that they were there, and see how they experienced what was going on, and then be able to share with you now, so that you can make the connection between what you know about history and personal experiences. That's really amazing. Just because you don't get stories like that in general, if you don't actually ask people, and find a way to get to the heart of their own personal story and history. So that's been, I guess, the most crucial part of this whole project, and learning how to interview people. It's a great skill, but it's such a challenge. And I don't think anybody really thinks about how hard it is, because it's just talking to people, but there's so many other things involved.
When we're interviewing people, sometimes the conversation flows and then we forget to ask some questions, and then we have to go back, ask these questions that we forgot to ask. So that's a kind of a challenge for us as well.
So one of the things that happens from the application stage to actual orientation is that sometimes your projects change drastically, or sometimes the tools that you said you were going to use in the application, maybe the digital humanities specialists actually say, well, you might not want to use that tool. That has been interesting, because those are not competencies that we have as from the community, as well as the students. We don't have those digital humanities competencies. So it's been wanted to explore what's the best way to visualize this movement of people. So that has been interesting. I think the public humanities space is really important, even for the faculty who are involved, because it reminds us of why we're going to have to be lifelong learners in this space. We're learning alongside the students what the best methodologies are, what are the best apps. We have had to talk among ourselves about, okay, so transcription is the worst part of conducting oral histories, right?
Yes.
You get the story, it's great, you're exhausted but energized at the same time because you've heard an amazing story. And then you have a 20, 30, 40 page transcript, and you have to face that daunting task. And it turns out that there's a lot of technology that can help with that. But we're discovering our own glitches in the technology and trying to kind of hack it to see what's the best way to get the transcript in a quick turnaround time as well. That's also one of the biggest problems in oral history projects.
I think the most useful information that's come up so far is that there's a reason why this work gets done, and it's because there's interest, there's a need for it, and also these stories just need to be shared. You just have to find a way to do it that is beneficial for you as an interviewer, and then beneficial for the person involved also in the community.
For me, I feel like people have to empathize the people who are living in public housing, who experience issues, like some serious issues. And after empathizing with such an issue, I think they can take an active role in trying to come up with solutions to it or to support the movement. So I feel like that's the most important part.
But it makes you curious, which I think is a very necessary skill as a human being. And what Dr. Fiona was saying about you continue to learn even when you're done with school. But like, I'm learning outside of school right now, and I feel like this is the most rewarding learning I've done in a really long time. It's not read and write, it's read and write, and then it's go ahead, do it. And I'm like, okay, how do you do it? Figure it out. But you have so much guidance, and you get to make mistakes, you get to learn from them.
I think for the exhibit in July that's going to be at City Hall that celebrates the anniversary, right? I think the fact that it's taking the form of an exhibit is really important, because we just went to a public hearing on Monday. about the new housing code. There are demonstrations all the time, there are press conferences, there are meetings with city leaders, but an exhibit is none of those. An exhibit is none of those things, right? It's a very different kind of space for storytelling and celebration, right?
Right.
I think it's an opportunity for all of the resident leaders and the tenant leaders to show how they're experts in their own life story, right? Everybody is an expert in their own life their own life history, their own life story. That's the power of oral history. But in the context of an exhibit, right, they get to place their life in the context of other people's experiences, and the public has a chance to step into this space and see Josh Serrano not just as a tenant leader, or not just as somebody who lives in public housing, but as a really passionate, funny Hartford young man, person who came of age in Hartford, as someone of Puerto Rican ancestry, as a father, as a son, and it's a very well-rounded picture of him, and you get to see how he honed those leadership skills and how he developed in his upbringing those kinds of speaking skills that makes him a very charismatic and a natural leader, right? So that by the time he could step into this space as a resident leader, you have a much better understanding of the evolution of that. It's not just a snapshot of his life, but you get to see how it fits into his overall life. So